All right, today we are starting a section on the question of free will. Do we have free will? And in this section, we're going to be looking at three positions or three answers to this question. First, for this lecture, we're going to be looking at the determinist answer to this question, which argues that there is no such thing as free will. We might say that free will is an illusion. So we're going to be looking at some arguments for that position today and one objection to it. And then in our next lectures, we're going to be looking at the libertarian notion of free will, as well as the compatibilist notion of free will. But we will start with determinism here. I think Wikipedia actually has a pretty condensed, concise, and clear definition of determinism. So I'll just use that for this lecture. Wikipedia says that determinism is the philosophical idea that all events, including our moral choices. So if you think of any moral choice that you make, it's an event that's happening in the space-time universe. So every event, including moral choices that we make, are determined completely by previously existing causes. And so if this is true, it follows that free will is an illusion. So why might somebody argue for this position? Well, I'll offer two arguments for this position here in this lecture. So argument number one is an argument really from introspection. So upon introspection, I notice that I have two wills. And I'll talk about what I mean by that, but there seems to be inside of me a deep will. You might call it the will of motivation. And on a determinist perspective, I have no control over that will. That will just happens to me. And then I have sort of a superficial will where I make choices, and I might even say that I make free choices, but if I reflect on it, those choices are governed by this deeper will that I have. And so it seems to be the case that I'm not actually free at the deepest level. A second argument is an argument that states if materialism is true, or the correct metaphysical understanding of the universe, then presumably determinism follows logically. So we've been talking about the mind-body problem in our class, and so materialism is one perspective on the mind-body problem, but materialism is also a broader philosophical idea that talks about the nature of the universe. And so if that nature and that perspective on the universe is correct, then it seems to be the case that determinism follows. And so we'll look at both of these arguments. So first, introspection. So upon introspection, we might ask the question, am I free to live a motivated life? So I'll just use the example of the gym, because I find that working out in the gym is something that, for me, sometimes can be a struggle. I think everyone can think of their own ideas. Some people have an easy time going to the gym, but I think maybe many people can relate to this idea. There are times in my life where I feel very motivated, and I go to the gym on a regular basis. And ideally, I would like to live the type of life where I go to the gym 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and just make that a consistent pattern. What I notice, however, is that there are months that go by where I seem to do that, and then there might be several weeks that go by where I don't. And if I ask myself, what happens in those moments when I don't go to the gym? Is it just the case that I'm freely choosing not to go to the gym? Well, what I notice, as I reflect on this deeply, it seems like I have two wills. So one will might be a superficial will that says, I want to be somebody that works out frequently. And so I set an alarm clock in the evening saying I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm going to go to the gym. But when the alarm clock goes off, I have another will. And this will is a little bit deeper. And this will is the will that governs my motivations. So if in that moment I am motivated to be a healthy person and I'm motivated to work out at the deepest level, then I will go to the gym. But if at that moment I'm motivated to, say, sleep in, get an extra 30 minutes of sleep, then I won't go to the gym. And if I think about that, why would that deeper will, if my goal is to make it to the gym 3 times, 4 times a week, why would that deeper will ever say, sleep in for 30 extra minutes? Well, it seems, as upon reflection, that I don't have control over that will. That will just happens to me. Sometimes that will says, yes, wake up, go to the gym, be motivated. And sometimes that will is saying, no, sleep in. And it also seems to be the case that my superficial will to make the choice where I think that I'm free is ultimately governed by that deeper will. And so that's sort of an argument from introspection. But there's another argument that focuses on our understanding of the universe. So if we think about the nature of the universe, if we're a materialist, we might argue that every event in the universe is governed by simple cause and effect relationships. We might be thinking about this in terms of Newtonian physics or something like that. And so from the initial moments of the Big Bang of the universe about 13.7 billion years ago, we might conceive of the universe as just a series of dominoes falling. So once the dominoes are set up and you knock over domino number 1, every subsequent domino just falls in place. It's easy to understand, and that's really the way that the universe functions. It's kind of a clockwork conception of the universe. Everything is operating according to cause and effect relationships. Well, if that's the case, then it seems to follow that since humans are just one tiny part of this universe, that we are governed by the same physical laws, which means that the neurons in our head are governed by the same physical laws that govern the universe. And so we might think of every thought that we have, every belief that we have, as just being the next domino falling in the cause and effect aspects of the universe. And if that's the case, then it follows that we don't have free will. Well, to hear somebody who represents this perspective, let's watch this video by Richard Dawkins to get his perspective on the question of free will.
I suppose, Dr. Dawkins, I would ask this to you. Is there a scientific basis for the concept of free will in human beings? And if not, is there a biological evolutionary reason why all of us believe we have free will?
The late Christopher Hitchens, when asked, does he believe in free will, replied, I have no choice. It's a question that I dread, actually, because I don't have a very well thought out view about it. I think that, I have a materialist view of the world. I think that that things are determined in a rational way by antecedent events. And so that commits me to the view that when I think I have free will, when I think that I'm exercising free choice, I'm deluding myself, that my brain states are determined by physical events. And yet that seems to contradict, to go against the very powerful subjective impression that we all have, that we do have free will. I think all I can do is recommend the works of my colleague Daniel Dennett on the subject, which are fascinating.
And there's a new book by another one of our colleagues, Sam Harris, on free will that's coming out. But
yes.
But I also have to agree that I think everything I know about the world tells me that there's no such thing as free will. I just think we act, but we act that the world behaves as if there's free will, and so it doesn't make much difference. Just like the particles in the room, we can discuss them statistically, and they behave as if they can do things that they're not being forced to do. It's just statistics. And we behave as if we have free will because we live in a very complex world where there's so many factors influencing any of our decisions that you can't trace that free will down to its source. And so The difference between a world where we act as if we have free will, or it looks like we have free will, and we really do, in my mind, is so minimal that it's a question for philosophers to worry about, but not me. And maybe with that, we'll thank you very much.
So that gives you just one perspective on determinism. Well, we might ask now, so what are the main objections to this view? Well, I'll give you one main objection, and the other objections that we'll look at actually will be more indirect objections, as we're looking at arguments for the libertarian perspective on free will and the compatibilist perspective. But right now I'll give you what seems to be the fundamental objection to determinism. And that is that if determinism's true, then there would never be a reason to think that determinism's true. Now, why would somebody argue this? Oh, well, consider a series of propositions. So proposition 1, every thought is determined. That's what determinism states. Well, my beliefs are thoughts, so it follows that my beliefs are determined. It's also the case that your beliefs are thoughts, and so it would follow that your beliefs are also determinism. Now let's say I believe in determinism, and you believe in free will. In this case, it suggests that the universe has caused contradictory beliefs. And if the universe, through impersonal cause and effect relationships, have caused contradictory beliefs, what confidence could we ever have to think that any of our beliefs are true, including our belief in determinism? And so this gets at what might be the fundamental objection to determinism. If you find that objection persuasive, you might want to look at other perspectives on free will, such as libertarianism or compatibilism, and that's what we'll be turning to in our next lectures.